Have you ever felt the weight of being misunderstood, as if the world around you moves with ease, while you stumble through a fog of expectations and judgments? Many people assume that greatness, success, or significance can only be measured by approval, recognition, or the company we keep. They tell you that to stand out you must belong, network, and constantly be seen. Yet Alan Watts often reminds us that this conventional wisdom is misleading. True greatness rarely blooms in the comfort of the crowd. It emerges in the solitude of self-discovery, in the moments where you confront your own thoughts, fears, and desires without distraction or applause. Before we go deeper, take a moment to subscribe, share, and comment. By doing so, you help this reflection reach other men who may be searching for meaning, strength, and clarity in a world that prizes conformity over depth. The deeper truth, which many resist, is that being alone is not a weakness, but the crucible of power and understanding. While society equates companionship with safety and validation, the path to greatness often requires walking where few dare, carrying burdens that others cannot see, and nurturing insight that can only arise when distractions are stripped away. The man who seeks significance must learn to be comfortable with himself, to listen to the quiet wisdom within, and to honor the stillness where clarity lives. It is in these solitary spaces that the mind sharpens, the heart strengthens, and the spirit finds the freedom to grow unbound by expectation. Imagine a man who has followed the usual route of seeking approval, validation, and camaraderie in every circle, yet finds his life hollow despite appearances of success. His peers may admire him superficially, yet he senses a quiet disconnect, a gap between who he is and how the world perceives him. It is in embracing the discomfort of solitude, in standing apart without fear, that he discovers the true dimensions of his character. He begins to understand that greatness is not a prize to be won through consensus, but a state cultivated through patience, reflection, and the courage to face himself fully. As we explore this idea in depth, consider how your own life may be shaped by the tension between societal expectation and personal authenticity. Every choice to blend in, to seek approval, or to avoid solitude may bring comfort, but it also delays the emergence of true greatness. In the moments of quiet isolation, away from the noise, the games, and the fleeting distractions of others, the potential for transformation is revealed. Throughout this video, we will uncover why being alone is not merely an absence of company, but a deliberate, necessary, and powerful step toward mastery over self, clarity of purpose, and the kind of strength that others often misinterpret as distance or aloofness. Before he understood the value of solitude, the man moved through life like everyone else, measuring himself by applause, recognition, and the constant hum of social validation. He filled his days with conversation, networking, and effort to be liked, to belong, to be part of the stream rather than standing apart. He believed that greatness would arrive with visibility, with approval, or with the accolades of others. Yet despite this relentless striving, a quiet emptiness lingered beneath the surface, a subtle discontent that no praise or friendship could erase. The illusion of connection kept him busy, but it never nourished the deeper parts of his soul, leaving him restless, anxious, and unaware of the power he was neglecting within himself. Then came the awakening, the realization that greatness cannot be borrowed from the world. It can only be cultivated within. In the moments he allowed himself to step back, to be alone without distraction, he began to hear the quiet voice of insight. What once seemed like loneliness revealed itself as space to think, to feel, and to understand without interference. The rituals of validation, the constant chase for attention, and the compulsive need to fit in suddenly appeared unnecessary. In solitude, the mind becomes sharp, and clarity emerges like a hidden stream, guiding him toward decisions, understanding, and creativity that were impossible in the clamor of conformity. As he embraced this solitude, the world began to look different. The approval he once sought seemed hollow. The need to impress vanished. He moved among colleagues, friends, and acquaintances without urgency, without neediness, carrying an inner calm that drew attention without effort. The external chaos no longer dictated his emotions, and the constant comparisons that had driven anxiety were replaced by self-reliance. What others saw as aloofness or detachment was in fact the quiet cultivation of power and discernment. Each day alone reinforced his ability to think deeply, to act decisively, and to resist being swayed by the fleeting opinions of others. This shift in perception gradually reshaped his life. Whereas before, relationships and interactions were measured in quantity and superficial metrics, now he learned to value substance over noise, depth over convenience. His solitude became a filter, separating those who resonated with authenticity from those entangled in pretense. In this contrast between the past and present, he saw the cost of distraction and the reward of intentional isolation. The world continued to chase spectacle, yet he moved with purpose, understanding that greatness is a quiet process, often misunderstood by those who never pause long enough to see its unfolding. The man begins to notice the invisible structures that govern how most people live, the constant need for approval, the unspoken rules of social performance, the assumption that value is determined by visibility and popularity. Everywhere he looks, people are caught in cycles of comparison, seeking to be liked, admired, or desired, measuring their worth against fleeting standards that shift with every gaze or whisper. He realizes how much of his own energy has been consumed by these silent agreements, by the compulsive effort to fit in, to be part of the stream, and to avoid the discomfort of being different. The structures that promise connection instead create chains, trapping him in routines that obscure the deeper life waiting beneath the surface. Once he steps away from participation in these illusions, a subtle but profound transformation begins. No longer bound by the expectation to perform, he experiences the world more fully, unfiltered and alive. The moments of solitude that once seemed isolating now reveal themselves as the spaces in which his mind and spirit can flourish. He understands that the relationships that endure are not bought with charm or compliance, but appear naturally when authenticity is offered without compromise. By rejecting the invisible rules of performance, he discovers that his presence alone carries weight, and that those who are drawn to him do so because of his essence, not the mask he might have worn to please or impress. The tension between appearance and essence becomes clear. To the outside world, he may seem distant, proud, or unapproachable. Some may misread his independence as arrogance or his quiet as weakness. Yet beneath these perceptions lies a man who is fully grounded, who has mastered the courage to confront himself without distraction, and who has learned that the strength of character is more important than the ease of acceptance. The contrast between how he appears and who he truly is reinforces the paradox of greatness. It often requires stepping away from the crowd, standing apart, and embracing a form of life that the majority cannot easily understand. In observing this tension, he also reinterprets familiar concepts. Silence is no longer emptiness, but a reservoir of insight. Solitude is not loneliness, but the forge of resilience. Withdrawal is not failure, but a strategy for clarity and mastery. He begins to recognize that what the world calls weakness, emptiness, or isolation is often the very terrain in which strength, understanding, and purpose are cultivated. Each deliberate step into solitude refines his awareness, deepens his discernment, and strengthens his capacity to act in alignment with his own truth, independent of applause, judgment, or societal validation. As he embraces solitude, the man begins to see desire in a new light. What once drove him relentlessly, attention, recognition, romantic conquest, now becomes a quiet measure, a guide pointing toward what aligns with his essence. The cravings that once distracted him are no longer commands but signals, revealing what is authentic versus what is fleeting. In this reinterpretation, longing itself becomes a tool for discernment. He understands that chasing others' approval is futile, while listening to the subtle stirrings of his own heart leads him toward meaningful choices and authentic bonds. Desire, once a source of anxiety, now becomes a compass pointing to depth, alignment, and true purpose. Loneliness, too, transforms under this new awareness. What once felt like a burden, a mark of failure, or a void to be filled, is now seen as the crucible of growth. In the quiet hours alone, he confronts himself without distraction, untangling habits, fears, and illusions. The very solitude he resisted now becomes the fertile ground in which his mind sharpens and his spirit strengthens. He realizes that what society condemns as weakness is often the necessary condition for insight, courage, and clarity. The stillness of being alone is not emptiness but presence, a space in which greatness quietly takes root, away from the noise, away from expectation, away from the ceaseless pressures of conformity. With this new understanding, the man begins to act differently in the world. His interactions are measured, intentional, and free from the compulsion to please or perform. He is neither arrogant nor detached in the ordinary sense, but fully anchored in the truth of his being. The very qualities others misinterpret as strangeness or distance now define his strength, independence, clarity, and the courage to prioritize inner alignment over external validation. In this stage, his life begins to change subtly but decisively. Connections deepen, opportunities align, and decisions are made with precision, not impulse. The transformation is internal first, and the external world inevitably reflects this newfound power. The paradox becomes clearer with each passing day. What seemed like withdrawal or detachment is actually liberation. What looked like emptiness is abundant space for self-mastery, and what appeared as weakness is the quiet strength of a man who no longer seeks to be understood by all, but to live fully in alignment with himself. The patterns of distraction, the endless chase for approval, the compulsive need to be visible, all fade away, replaced by presence, patience, and the kind of inner freedom that those who never dare solitude can scarcely imagine. Through this, he begins to live not for others, but in a rhythm of life that honors depth, clarity, and authenticity. As the man moves deeper into this life of intentional solitude, the world begins to respond in ways that both intrigue and challenge him. Friends, colleagues, and acquaintances may whisper that he has changed, that he is distant, detached, or even unapproachable. To some, his refusal to constantly seek approval or participate in every social expectation seems like arrogance. Yet those external perceptions reveal nothing of his inner transformation. He has learned that true strength is not validated by the opinions of others, and that the quiet cultivation of presence, awareness, and discernment is far more powerful than any applause or recognition the world can offer. Within this tension between appearance and essence, he experiences freedom. What outsiders see as withdrawal is, in truth, a deliberate and necessary choice, a shield that protects his growth and a beacon for those who understand depth. Relationships that once demanded performance now exist effortlessly, flowing naturally from authenticity. The man no longer chases connection. Instead, connection finds him, drawn by the resonance of his presence rather than by charm or obligation. In this dynamic, he begins to understand a subtle truth. The world may misunderstand, judge, or even criticize him, but the clarity and integrity he has cultivated are far more valuable than widespread approval. This new clarity gradually reshapes his daily life. Decisions are made with calm precision, no longer influenced by fear, desire for validation, or the pressure to conform. His interactions, once reactive and driven by expectation, are now intentional, guided by alignment with his true self. The transformation is evident not only internally in his sense of peace and confidence, but externally in the way others respond. Those who are superficial may retreat, but those capable of deeper understanding are naturally drawn to him. The paradox is striking. What appears to be distance and detachment is actually a powerful magnet for authenticity, a natural consequence of living in truth rather than in performance. Gradually, every aspect of his life reflects the impact of this inner evolution. Opportunities, decisions, and relationships that align with his purpose emerge effortlessly, while distractions and shallow obligations lose their hold. He moves with an ease and calm that is almost imperceptible to the casual observer, yet profoundly influential in shaping his environment. The contrast between who he once was, chasing, striving, seeking approval, and who he has become, present, discerning, free, is stark. In this way, the tension between external perception and inner reality amplifies his understanding of what it truly means to be great. Not admired or followed, but grounded, independent, and alive in his own truth. As the man fully embraces the power of solitude, the transformation penetrates every dimension of his life, reshaping his thoughts, actions, and sense of self. Where he once felt compelled to perform, to seek validation, or to curry favor, he now moves with quiet certainty, guided by his own discernment and awareness. The incessant noise of social expectation no longer dictates his choices. Instead, his attention turns inward, toward the cultivation of clarity, insight, and strength. He begins to notice the subtle currents of life that previously went unnoticed, the patterns in relationships, the unspoken motives behind actions, and the quiet signals that indicate authenticity in others. In this stillness, his mind sharpens and his understanding deepens, revealing a world far richer than the one defined by applause or approval. Externally, his life begins to reflect the fruits of this inner discipline. People may perceive him as enigmatic or aloof, misunderstanding his independence as pride, yet the depth of his presence naturally attracts those capable of resonating with authenticity. Superficial acquaintances fade away, not through rejection or animosity, but through the simple truth that his priorities no longer align with distraction, pretense, or convenience. In contrast, those who value substance, insight, and integrity are drawn to him, forming relationships that are rare, enduring, and deeply rewarding. He discovers that true companionship is not manufactured by effort or charm. It emerges naturally when a man is willing to be fully himself, free from obligation, expectation, or the constant need to perform. The man also begins to reinterpret his past experiences through this new lens. Failures, rejections, and disappointments that once seemed like burdens or evidence of inadequacy are now recognized as guides, signposts that steered him toward depth and independence. Each moment of discomfort, each period of isolation was not punishment, but preparation, creating the space in which his character could mature, his perception could sharpen, and his ability to navigate life with discernment could grow. He understands that the very challenges he once resisted were essential to cultivating the qualities that define greatness: resilience, patience, and the capacity to stand apart without fear or compromise. Internally, the man experiences an expansion of freedom and power that cannot be measured externally. Where anxiety and neediness once clouded his decisions, there is now a steady calm. Where fear of rejection and desire for approval dictated behavior, there is now presence and confidence. Solitude has become a tool, a space of mastery rather than deprivation. The very act of standing alone, once considered a weakness, now functions as a strengthening force, honing his discernment, focusing his energy, and allowing him to act decisively in alignment with his own truth. In this process, he learns the paradoxical nature of growth. Stepping away from the crowd, from validation, and from distraction does not diminish influence. It deepens it, giving his actions and relationships a gravity they never had before. On a practical level, this transformation begins to cascade into every aspect of his life. Decisions are no longer reactive or influenced by fear. They are deliberate, intentional, and guided by insight. Opportunities emerge in alignment with his values rather than through chance or popularity. Relationships deepen, not through obligation, but through resonance. Even in moments of challenge or uncertainty, he maintains clarity, understanding that true power is cultivated not in conformity or convenience, but in authenticity and discernment. The contrast between who he was before, restless, anxious, seeking approval, and who he has become, grounded, self-reliant, and quietly magnetic, is striking. The man realizes that what the world often mistakes for isolation is, in fact, liberation. What appears as weakness is in truth strength, and what seemed like loss has become the very foundation for profound freedom and mastery of self. And so the paradox stands revealed. The solitude that once seemed like a burden, a sign of failure, or a form of exile, is actually the crucible in which greatness is forged. The man who appeared distant, strange, or unapproachable to others has become whole, grounded, and quietly powerful. His strength is not derived from recognition, applause, or external validation, but from the clarity, discernment, and courage cultivated in the stillness of his own company. What the world misreads as weakness or detachment is, in truth, the foundation of enduring influence, depth, and authenticity. Solitude, far from being a lack, is the very vessel in which insight, mastery, and presence are nurtured. This clarity transforms not only his perception, but his experience of life itself. Every past disappointment, failed connection, or unfulfilled desire is reinterpreted as guidance, shaping the path toward authenticity and wisdom. The man no longer measures himself by the fleeting opinions of others, nor does he seek approval in vain. Instead, he moves through the world with intentionality and poise, responding only to what resonates with his essence. In doing so, he attracts relationships, opportunities, and experiences that are aligned with truth, depth, and integrity, rather than chasing what is superficial or temporary. The life he now leads, though quieter and more solitary on the surface, is richer, more focused, and imbued with a freedom that those perpetually seeking validation can scarcely comprehend. If this reflection resonates with you, take a moment to subscribe for more insights that illuminate the path to deeper understanding and self-mastery. Share this video with someone who may need to hear that greatness is not measured by popularity or recognition, but by the courage to stand alone and the wisdom to cultivate one's own presence. And if you feel compelled, leave a comment with your own experiences, thoughts, or reflections on solitude, strength, and authenticity. Every comment enriches the conversation, creating a community where men who seek depth and clarity can connect, learn, and grow together. In embracing solitude, you discover that the rarest treasures are never sought. They are recognized, received, and honored because you have cultivated within yourself the clarity, courage, and presence that allow greatness to emerge naturally.